There was one meeting and two different versions of what happened at it. Sources tell CNN that former FBI Director James Comey wrote a memo afterwards saying that President Trump had asked him to end their investigation into Michael Flynn. The White House flatly denies that account. If it's true, does it amount to obstruction of justice? Let's discuss this with former U.S. Attorney Michael Moore and retired FBI Chief of Staff and Supervisory Special Agent James A. Galliano. Great to have you both here. James, I want to start with you because you had a professional interaction with James Comey often, I mean weekly, even if by teleconference. Do you believe that his account of a meeting can be trusted?
Absolutely. I mean, if you contrast him with the president, James Comey's word and ethics are unimpeachable. A couple of things to unpack here first. It's not out of the realm of possibility that FBI directors take notes. Going back to J. Edgar Hoover, served under 8 presidents from Calvin Coolidge to Richard Nixon. He handwrote notes or he dictated them to his personal secretary, Helen Gandy. She typed them up and put them into the notorious file cabinet. Today, we don't do things that way. What would have happened would have been the director would have either gone back to his office, written down some notes, which can be subpoenaed. They'll go into a 1A envelope, which is where our evidentiary notes go, and then he would have basically written up an electronic communication. Those things get attached to a file, and they can be subpoenaed.
So you don't see this as a Dear Diary moment. You're saying that this wasn't something that he secreted away for a rainy day. This is something that's pro forma, and Comey was known for this?
Absolutely. Not Director Comey's first rodeo. I mean, going all the way back as far as 2004, when the infamous, bedside showdown with John Ashcroft and obviously Andy Carr from the White House. The director has been known in his professional life to take copious notes and to file those away.
So, Michael, what's the process whereby we get to see these notes?
Well, as you said, they could be subpoenaed ultimately. If we had a special prosecutor, those things can become evidence in a case. I have some question on whether or not the FBI and our other guests might could tell us whether or not they would claim some privilege initially on the notes because of a pending investigation. But my guess is if they're put in the envelope and considered evidence in the case, that they could be subject to a subpoena. This is an interesting case because the question is, do we ever actually get to a criminal obstruction charge, or is this something that's more likely to take the path of impeachment in the House, which is a different standard and a different investigation and such as that? Ultimately, those decisions are made by the House of Representatives.
Well, Mike, it would have to be, right? I mean, almost all the judicial reckoning on this. The civil side's different. We got the Paula Jones case that the Supreme Court decided. But usually impeachment would be seen as the first step, and then if there's any penalties, they would come after. So to your point, all of this would be done in a political context, which would make it a lot softer in terms of what the FBI has to offer up. Who's asking them? They'd probably be politicians, right?
Right, and I think it's remote that there would be any kind of criminal charge against a sitting president. I think you have a few people who want to argue that could still happen, but the chances are slim to none that's going to happen. So you're really talking about whether or not a case is moved forward by the House of Representatives and whether or not they pursue articles of impeachment. If they do that, then ultimately they make the decisions. They make the decisions on intent, they make the decisions on corrupt influence, and all those things, they define them in a political context.
James, we now know that James Comey was known for doing this, that he liked taking notes. Particularly when there was something out of the ordinary. Sources say that when something struck him as a momentous occasion or possibly veering out of the bounds of, legality or certainly appropriateness, he went back and took notes, good and bad, of everything that he could remember in the moment. What was the feeling in the Bureau? Did people know this about him?
Allison, it almost appears to me as if he was being an FBI agent. He was basically building a case. Do I believe that, and again, we have to stipulate that this quote, memo or electronic communication actually exists. The New York Times says it does. Let's presume that it does. I have to think that at this juncture, he was just basically laying out the framework that if things went sideways, here's what happened. I recorded these within 5 days because FBI agents are required, once there's an interaction, a meeting, an interview, to go down on paper with that within 5 days.
Which is a nod, again, to how powerful contemporaneous recording is. There's something about being in the moment that seems to make people less conniving, absent evidence otherwise. But boy, what a case of power of the pen. Galliano's pen there is a long-range slug, right? And you can't see it, Mike, but he's got a bullet for a pen, and what a metaphor that is right now. Let me ask you a quick legal question. Let's say Comey did this exactly the way Galliano suggests. It was by the book. Should he have shown those memos? There is some reporting out there that this happened, by the way, but we don't know for sure, that he should have shown it to the DOJ. Shouldn't he have gone to the DOJ if he had any kind of legit concern that anybody, let alone the president, was trying to obstruct the case?
You know, I think probably he handled it the right way. There can be an argument whether or not he should have gone maybe to the Deputy Attorney General or somebody at that time, but really what he did was protect the investigation. And he handled it in a way where he documented the interaction. He was able to make a contemporaneous writing, and as you say, it's really given more credibility and reliability because it was made at the time. And he made that part of the file. And you know, the FBI is a great investigative agency, and they are accustomed to papering their files ad nauseum, making sure that every interaction is documented and such as that. So I think he probably did it the right way.
James, Michael, thank you very much for all
Great.
of the insights and information. Great to have you here.
You'll be here.
Thank you.
All right, so one